Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Kuf Nun Vav Amud Beis at the new Mishnah, 11 lines from the bottom. Our Mishnah discusses preparing food for an animal's consumption that was not prepared before Shabbos. Can one provide the animal with such food which was not prepared before Shabbos? Says the Mishnah, Mechatchin es hadiluim lifnei habehema. One may cut gourds before the animal, meaning to say gourds are hard, and hard gourds are normally used for human consumption. However, on Shabbos, since humans cannot eat gourds without cooking it, so therefore they should be off limits. However, if one cuts it in small pieces, they are edible for animals. So even though they're normally designated for human consumption, this Tana, which is the sheet of Rabbi Shimon, who's Mekel and Muktzah, says that one can, yes, cut the gourds into small pieces before the animal. Ves hanevela lifnei haklovim. And similarly, when it comes to a nevela we're talking about, which is with meat that is tough, like the meat of an elephant, or it's talking about regular meat, but it's difficult for the klovim because they're little puppies to eat. So here, normally, again, the animal is designated for human consumption, but it dies on Shabbos. According to Rabbi Shimon, even if it dies on Shabbos, is not considered to be muktzah because there's a possibility that an animal may die on Shabbos, and therefore it can give it to animals, it can give it to the klovim. So according to Rabbi Shimon, one can do this. One can go ahead and cut the nevela that was something that died on Shabbos and give it to the klovim. Rabbi Yehuda is more strict when it comes to muktzah. Im loy haisa nevela me'erev Shabbos, asura lefisha eina min hamuchan. Rabbi Yehuda is of the shita, if something was not prepared before Shabbos, then it's muktzah. And therefore, when it comes to the nevela, that which the animal died on Shabbos, before Shabbos, it was designated for human consumption. And therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's muktzah. So when it dies on Shabbos, that meat is muktzah, cannot be given to klovim. Similarly, he's arguing on the reisha. Because we're talking about gourds that are hard, that are normally used for human consumption, therefore, since on Shabbos, it cannot be given to a human because it needs to be cooked. So before Shabbos, it was already set aside as muktzah, as not to be used even for animals. So therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, who's strict on muktzah, he argues on both points that since something was not prepared before Shabbos, it's muktzah. Itma, the Gemara, brings the following statements, and it gives us a mnemonic for the different shitas. The first three shitas in the Amoraim over here follow the shita of Rabbi Yehuda, who's machmir and muktzah. The next three shitas follows the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, who's mekel and muktzah. Orel shachaz. The first three shitas is ayin, reish, lamed, that again follow the shita of Rabbi Yehuda. Says the Gemara to explain. Omar Ula, this is the first one, this is ayin, Ula. Halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda, the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda's machmir in muktzah. V'af Rav sovar la halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda. And even Rav holds that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, and this is the reish in Orel. Rav, midichroche dezuze, those mats that are used to cover merchandise that is on the ship as cargo. So he says in regard to those mats, the Rav Aser Shmuel Shori, that Rav is Aser. And therefore Rav holds like Rabbi Yehuda in regards to muktzah as well. V'af Levi Sovar la halacha Rabbi Yehuda, and even Levi holds that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda in regards to muktzah. And again, Lamed refers to Levi in the word of Orel. Ki hod Levi ki havu maisi trefosa lekamei b'yoyim tova. They would bring a treifa, an animal that was shechted on Yom Tif, and was found to be perhaps a suffix of a treifa. They would bring it before Rabbi Levi on Yontif. Lo have a chazi lo ella ki yosif akil kalisa. He would not look at the animal unless he was next to a mound of garbage. So they can lay the animal on the mound, and if indeed it's determined to be a treifa, it would be muktzah, and he can just leave it there. The Omar, he would say, Dilma lo miskasher, maybe it's not kosher, maybe it will be indeed a treifa. And it would not be fitting, therefore, even to give to klovim, because before Shabbos, or for Yontif in this case, it was considered to be an animal that was going to be used for human consumption. So therefore we see that Levi ascribes to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who's machmir in muktzah. Now the Gemara goes on to the shitas that hold like Rabbi Shimon, who's mekel in muktzah. And this is the numamik that we saw before of Shachaz. Ushmuel, Omar halacha ki Rabbi Shimon. The shin is referring to Shmuel, who holds the halacha like is Rabbi Shimon. Va'af Zi'iri, Savar halacha ki Rabbi Shimon. And Zi'iri also holds the halachas like Rabbi Shimon. Here, it's out of place in terms of Shachaz. It's a Zayin of Shachaz, Zi'iri, who holds like the sheet of Rabbi Shimon Disnan, as it says in the following Mishnah. Behema shemeisa lo yizazena b'mekayma. A behema that dies on Yontif, you cannot move it from its place. V'tirgma Zi'iri, and Zi'iri explains what is it referring to that you cannot move the carcass from its place. Bebehema kachim, ava bechulin shaper dami. We're talking about a behema that was consecrated as a carbon. That's why you cannot move it, because it's asur bahana. But if it was a behema that was bechulin, so you could move it. So you see that he's makel in regards to muktzah, like the sheet of Rabbi Shimon. Raf Rabbi Yochanan, Omar Lach Rabbi Shimon. This is the ches in Shachaz, Rabbi Yochanan. He says the halacha is indeed like Rabbi Shimon as well, who's mekel and muktzah. Umiyam Rabbi Yochanan hachi. The Gemara challenges, says, who said that Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Shimon in muktzah? V'ha Omar Rabbi Yochanan halacha kestam mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan holds the halacha is like stam mishnah, like we find in Shas. V'tnan, it states in the stam mishnah, we're on top of Kufnun Zayin Amud Aleph, ein mevakin eitzi min hakarois. On Yontif, you cannot cut wood that was set aside for building. So therefore, it's muktzah because it's set aside from building and not to be used for firewood. And a beam that broke, which ultimately would be used for firewood, but since it was a beam that was designated again for building, so the fact that it broke cannot be used now on Yontif for firewood. So we see, according to the Stam Mishnah, that muktzah is like Rabbi Yehuda, where machmir, since it was not prepared before Yontif as firewood. Rabbi Yochanan answers the Gemara, Hahu ki Rabbi Yosi bar Yehuda masnilo. Rabbi Yochanan says this is not a Stam Mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan, he explains this Mishnah, his girsa was such that it was according to the opinion of Rabbi Yosi bar Yehuda. So it's not a Stam Mishnah, it's not against this klal that Rabbi Yochanan holds, the halacha is kistam Mishnah. Toshma, the Gemara brings a following Mishnah to ask on Rabbi Yochanan, again to say, does Rabbi Yochanan indeed hold like Rabbi Shimon? Matchilin be'arei meshateven, one can begin to use the straw, a heap of straw, for fire, to be used as firewood on Shabbos, on Yontif. But he cannot use the eitzim that are in the muktzah. Muktzah refers to the area behind the houses that was set aside for storage. So you cannot use those woods that were set aside in the muktzah. So you see over here, according to this Mishnah, it says you can be matchilin b'aremas hateven. Here the assumption is that the teven was spoiled, and therefore it was designated for fire. So that's permissible on Yontif. But the 18 that were put in the muktzah on the back of the house as storage, that cannot be used. So we see like the shita of Rabbi Yehuda, that which was not prepared before Yontif as firewood, cannot be used as firewood. Answers the Gemara Hasam ba'arze va'ashuchim. Here we're talking about wood that was put in the muktzah and stored away to be built, to be used for building, because this is cedar wood. And therefore, the muktzah machmas chisaron kis. Here it's a special type of muktzah because it's valuable. Therefore, the owner sets it aside because of its value, does not want it to then be used at all. So he has mesiach das from it, his maksedaito mimenu for the entire time of Yontif. Afil Rabbi Shimon moide, and here Rabbi Shimon ascribes, he even agrees to the opinion that when it comes to muktzah machmas chisaron kis, that it's muktzah. Toshma, the Gemara asks from the following Mishnah: Ein mashkin v'shoichtin es hamidbariyos. One cannot on Yontif water and shecht. Those animals are called midbariyos. We're talking about animals that go out in the time of Pesach and only returns the time of the rainy season months later. Because since they're not around on Yontif, one cannot go ahead and use them by shechting them on Yontif. The assumption is that they're muktzah, they're set aside. Aval mashkin v'shoichtin es habaysos. But you could go ahead and water and shecht those domestic animals, those animals that go outside the tchum during the day, but they return to sleep at night within the tchum. So therefore they're domestic, they're going to be around, and therefore you can go ahead and use them by shechting them on Yontif. By the way, that which we say you can water and shecht, the watering is not a problem at all on Yontif. The water just facilitates after the shechting, they can go ahead and they can remove the skin more easily. So over here we're talking about that one is able to then go ahead and water and shecht the animals that are domestic, but those that are going to be going far away and will not be returning for several months, those cannot be used on Yontif. So here we see the shita of Rabbi Yehuda that indeed they are muktzah. Rabbi Yochanan answers the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan stama achrina eshkach. Rabbi Yochanan has another stama that overrides this stama. Now, that which we're going to say that he has another stama really is not what we call a stam, classical stam Mishnah. But we'll soon see that it overrides it. Says the Mishnah. Beishamai omri, this is a Mishnah we saw earlier. Beishamai omri magbihan me'ala shulchan atzamos v'klipin. Beishamai says when it comes to the leftovers of the food, one can pick up those bones and those klipin, those peels that are edible by animals. He can pick them up with his own hands. In other words, they're not muktzah. Ubeis Hillel oimrim misalik es tavla kula umenaro. Beis Hillel says that you have to pick it up with the tablet that's underneath it, because that's a kli, and then you'll be picking it up. It'll be a tilto minatzad, and then you can menar it. You can go ahead and tilt. You can shake those klipos and those atzamos off. And Rav Nachman points out that here Beis Shammai is mekil in muktzah and Beis Hillel is machmir in muktzah. That's exactly the opposite of our Mesara, that Beis Shammai is the one who's machmir in muktzah, like Rabbi Yehuda, and Beis Hillel is mekil in muktzah, like Rabbi Shimon. So here, when the Gemara says we have Rabbi Yochanan that says here's a stam Mishnah, we mean to say that the Mishnah is like Beis Hillel, and Beis Hillel is the sheet of Rabbi Shimon. Therefore, Rabbi Yochanan says this overrides the other stam Mishnah, whereby he ascribes the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. Says Gemara weiter, Pliga ba Rav Acha v'Ravina. Rav Acha and Ravina argue. Chad Omar, one says Bikol HaShabbos Kula Halach Rabbi Shimon Lebar me Muktzah Machmas Mius. The halach is like Rabbi Shimon, except for the type of muktzah called muktzah machmas mius. Because of its disgusting nature, then this object is set aside, even according is set aside as muktzah, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon is choylek and says muktzah machmas mius is also, there's no complete hesech hadas from this item, and therefore, even though it's true, it's mius, it's mos, but still Rabbi Shimon says one can use it on Shabbos. Umay nihu, what is an example of this muktzah machamas mius? Ner yoshon, a ner made out of ceramic that has been used before. Since it has oil on the ceramic, on the clay, then it becomes mius, and therefore Rabbi Shimon says even though it's mius you can use, it's only Rabbi Yehuda says that it cannot be used because muktzah machmas mius. So we have an opinion over here that the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon, except when it comes to muktzah machmas mius, which is then aser. But the other muktzah, we would say, is mutter, the shita of Rabbi Shimon. And the other one says the muktzah machmas mius nami halakha Rabbi Shimon. The halakha is also like Rabbi Shimon in regards to muktzah machmas mius, that one can use an object that is mos, like a ner yashan. Lebar mi muktzah machmas iser. When is the opinion not like Rabbi Shimon in regards to the muktzah machmas iser? Ask the Gemara, what is the example of muktzah machmas iser? Ner shehiliku ba ba'oisa Shabbos, a ner that was lit on the onset of Shabbos. Now, according to Rabbi Shimon, only while it is lit does the ner become muktzah, and one cannot metaltal such a ner. But once the ner goes out, so Rabbi Shimon says you could go ahead and metaltal this object, this ner. The halacha, he's saying, is not like Rabbi Shimon in this regard, because the other opinion, which he's saying the halacha is like, is that once it was lit on Erev Shabbos, during Bein HaShmoshos, we say that the shalheves, the flame itself, is muktzah, and the kli, which we call the ner, and the oil, and the psil, those are all a basis ledavar ha'aser. So therefore, on the onset of Shabbos, we say migu diskatzoi mi ben hashmoshos iskatzoi lekol haShabbos. That which was muktzah on ben hashmoshos remains muktzah even the entire Shabbos. So even when the flame goes out, it remains muktzah. So he says over here, the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon in regards to muktzah machmas mius, but not in regards to muktzah machmas iser. Aval muktzah machmas chisaron kis afil Rabbi Shimon moide. But the type of muktzah called muktzah machmas chisaron kis, which we described before as being something that's expensive, that has value, that a person sets aside. For example, a knife of a moyel or the knife of a shoichet. Those are things that are considered to be muktzah machmas chisaron kis, and even Rabbi Shimon would be moide that is muktzah on Shabbos. This not like it says in the Mishnah. Kol hakelim nitolim b'Shabbos. All of the vessels that are both kli shemalachta leheter or kli shemalachta leiser that can be moved, even kli shemalachta leiser b'tzorich gufa b'tzorich mekoimoy, that can be moved chutz mimaser hagadol, except a maser hagadol, which is a saw. The yeser shel macharesha, on the yasid shel macharesha, that which is also a form of a knife that is used for plowing. So these two items are examples of a kli shechisaron kis. Because of their value, the owner is concerned, since they're valuable, they might get blunted. And therefore, these are items that cannot be moved on Shabbos, even according to Rabbi Shimon.